The Constitutional Committee of the Peruvian Congress has rejected a new bid to advance elections to 2023 and filed the request. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad arrived in Moscow to formalize with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin an agenda of joint cooperation between both countries. In Nigeria, the Independent National Electoral Commission informed that it will hand over documents related to the recent general elections to opposition political parties as they conduct a fraud investigation. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The Constitutional Committee of the Peruvian Congress has rejected a new bid to advance elections to 2023 and filed the request. The bill, which sought to bring forward the presidential elections in the Andean country, was rejected as the motion received 12 negative votes and against only 9 positive ones. The main arguments behind the rejection as well as the decision to file the bill were diverse, from far-right parliamentarians who oppose the advancing of elections altogether to leftist lawmakers who argued the proposal did not include a referendum for the Constituent Assembly, one of the people's demands on the streets. Meanwhile, popular unrest continues in the country, which has seen massive demonstrations against the government at the National Congress after the ousting of former President Pedro Castillo on December 7, 2022. In Mexico, a total of 354,000 fentanyl pills, known in the drug world as rainbows, were found in a pickup truck bound for the United States. According to the Attorney General's office, the shipment was found hidden in the vehicle's engine during a search in Ahome, Sinaloa, amidst investigation on the trafficking of this narcotic. Along with the pills, they also found 2.7 kilos of the unprocessed drug, ready to be converted into pills, allegedly in the neighboring country. The detainees confessed that everything was destined for the United States, as consumption rates for the drug as well as prices are the highest in this country. The Colombian Navy seized 2.6 tons of cocaine from a submarine that was moving through the Pacific heading to Central America. In the vessel, they also found 2 dead and 2 people in poor health conditions. In his Twitter account, the President Gustavo Petro highlighted that the naval force is playing a fundamental role in the seizure of cocaine through interdiction operations. In an institutional video of the Navy, frigate captain Christian Andres Guzman informed that the intersection of a semi-submersible craft of approximately 50 meters long was made, which was carrying 2,643 kilograms of cocaine hydrochloride. The deceased, the 2 rescued, and the drugs were transferred to the municipality of Tumaco, Department of Nariño, bordering Ecuador, where they were placed at the disposal of the technical investigation body of the prosecutor's office. Moments after the decision made by President Gustavo Petro, Colombia's Peace High Commissioner Danilo Rueda spoke about the Attorney General's decision.
Moments after the decision made by President Gustavo Petro, Colombia's Peace High Commissioner Danilo Rueda spoke about the Attorney General's decision. A greeting to all. Today, peace is making headway. Integral peace, total peace. The President of the Republic, Gustavo Petro, has announced to Colombians and to the world that we are very close to initiate a second round of talks. This will be with the FARC's General Staff after 7 months of exploration with irregular armed groups that operate in several departments of Colombia, through more than 19 armed fronts. The Attorney General made a decision that we value very much in the construction of peace. He has ordered the suspension of arrest warrants so that FARC commanders may meet and define who will be their spokespersons and delegates to the talks. This decision is very important and is key in building Colombians' trust in the peace process.
In Cuba, activists, intellectuals, politicians, and journalists from 14 countries participating in the second edition of the Patria International Colloquium on Tuesday expressed their rejection of the blockade imposed by the United States on the island. In the final declaration of the event, held in the capital's Casa de las Americas, they stressed that the blockade is an illegal policy of economic asphyxiation promoted and sustained by the United States, which has reached a new level with the offensive of digital imperialism. They pointed out that the restrictions in cyberspace constitute a break on individual and collective development, on the formation of citizenship, and on the integral participation of human development. Participants of the colloquium vowed to strengthen the communication networks of their countries and to design strategies for public intervention in the face of the proliferation of disinformation campaigns and attacks on the popular movements of Latin America and the Caribbean. The Biden administration, despite climate concerns from environmental groups, approved a controversial oil drilling project on Monday on Alaska's North Slope. The Interior Department gave the green light to U.S. energy giant ConocoPhillips to drill for oil at 3 sites in federally owned National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska's pristine western Arctic. During the 2020 presidential race, Biden vowed not to approve any new oil and gas leases on public lands, and he has been under intense pressure by environmentalists not to approve the so-called Willow Project. However, Alaska lawmakers strongly backed the $8 billion drilling plan, defending it as a source of several thousand jobs and a contributor to U.S. energy independence over 30 years. The Trump administration approved the Willow Project at the end of the former president's term, but it was then blocked by a judge for further review. Let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account of teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad arrived in Moscow to formalize with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin an agenda of joint cooperation between both countries. The Syrian head of state was received at Moscow's Vnukovo International Airport by Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov, who is also a special representative for the Russian president. The Kremlin confirmed that Putin and al-Assad will meet on Wednesday to discuss bilateral cooperation between both countries. The leaders are expected to discuss also current issues as well as further cooperation in the political, commercial, economic, and humanitarian spheres. Russia announced to the United Nations that it is being excluded from the investigation about the explosions of the Nord Stream gas pipelines. In this sense, Dmitry Polyansky, Russia's first deputy permanent representative to the UN, said his government handed out to the international organization a copy of correspondence with Denmark, Germany, and Sweden, which are investigating the Nord Stream pipeline explosions to prove they do not provide the necessary information to Moscow. In this sense, Polyansky added the documents allow the UN to verify the country's statements of being truthful about the progress of their investigation are untrue. Russian President Vladimir Putin stated on Tuesday that his country has greatly strengthened its economic sovereignty in 2022. The comments came during his visit to an aircraft factory in the city of Ulan-Ude. For his part, Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that due to Western sanctions, the Russian banking system is insured against the negative impact of the collapse of 2 U.S. banks. In this way, Peskov pointed out that the events on the U.S. financial market did not affect the Russian stock market and exemplified this by showing that in the last 24 hours, Sberbank shares have increased by 1.4%, while Tinkoff registered a growth of 2%. On the other hand, the shares of the gas company Gazprom increased by 0.7%, and those of the oil company Rosneft did so by 0.67%. On Tuesday, the Lebanese pound has sunk to a historic low against the US dollar on the country's parallel market, the latest grim milestone in the economic fallout of the Middle Eastern nation. The Lebanese pound officially fell at 15,000 to the dollar from 1,507 before the economic crisis hit in 2019, and the currency's market value was at about 60,000 to the dollar in late January. Lebanese banks were closed on Tuesday as they resumed an open-ended strike against what the Association of Banks in Lebanon described as arbitrary judicial measures against lenders after depositors filed lawsuits to retrieve savings. Since last year, the country has had no president and only a caretaker government amid persistent deadlock between rival alliances in parliament. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris will travel in late March to several African countries for the first time since taking office, her press team announced on Tuesday. With this trip, Harris will become the highest-ranking official in Joe Biden's administration to visit Africa and the first Black and Asian U.S. Vice President to set foot in the region. She is expected to land first in Ghana, then Tanzania, and finish in Zambia before returning to Washington, said Harris Press Secretary Kristen Allen, who added that the Vice President will meet with the three presidents to discuss regional and global priorities. The White House is seeking to reposition U.S. interests in the part of the world in an attempt to counter the influence of Russia and China, countries that are expanding their footprint daily through their growing economic clout. North Korea fired two new ballistic missiles over the Sea of Japan in response to the joint military exercises between South Korea and the United States. According to South Korean military authorities, the short-range missiles were launched from the South Hwanghae province. For his part, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said there are no reports of any damage related to the North Korean missile launches. Pyongyang stated it has been conducting defensive missile tests in the face of continued threats against its territory by Washington and its allies in the region. teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat, dial 461, and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break, and we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Nigeria, the Independent National Electoral Commission informed on Tuesday that it will deliver documents related to the recent general elections to opposition political parties that have demanded them to determine if there was fraud. The president of the electoral entity, Mahmoud Yakubu, expressed through a press release that the INEC has nothing to hide and nothing I will deliver the material requested by political parties. According to the Electoral Commission, the previous presidential elections were won by the candidate of the ruling All Progressive Congress Party, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, with 37% of the votes in dispute, but the opposition has rejected these results. Nigeria is the most populated country in the continent, with 216 million inhabitants, and some 93.5 million voters went out for the presidential and legislative elections. Pakistan Royal Police on Tuesday used water cannon and tear gas to push back supporters of former Prime Minister Imran Khan, who had gathered outside his house to prevent his arrest. Khan was ousted from office by a non-confidence vote last year and has been involved in a series of legal cases as he campaigns for early elections and his return to office. It is the second time in recent weeks that police have been dispatched from the capital, Islamabad, to Khan's home in the eastern city of Lahore to serve an arrest warrant after he skipped several court dates linked to a corruption case citing security concerns. However, officers were met by at least 200 Khan supporters. Pakistan faces a stark economic downturn and a spiraling security situation with a spate of deadly attacks on police headquarters linked to the Pakistan Taliban. A delegation of European diplomats on Tuesday visited Palestinian families facing imminent forced eviction initiated by Israeli settlers groups. The evictions have placed more than 80 individuals under imminent threat of forced displacement in the East Jerusalem neighborhoods of Sheikh Jarrah, Silwan, and the Old City, headed by EU representative in Palestine, Sven Kuhn von Burgdorf, and comprising some 25 diplomats from several European nations. The delegation visited the Palestinian families at risk of dispossession and forcibly eviction and had the opportunity to witness their suffering firsthand, calling on the Israeli occupation authorities to reverse the decisions on the intended evictions. In this sense, they reiterated the bloc's rejection of the policies implemented by the Israeli occupation authorities in Jerusalem in violation of international law. Israel's parliament took another step to push forward a legal reform package that has sparked mass protests against the hard-right government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Lawmakers both approved in first reading a bill that would, among other things, allow the legislative body to override Supreme Court rulings with a simple majority vote and deny the court the right to review such a move. The latest measure was adopted by 61 to 52 votes, but will still need to be approved in a committee and then in second and third plenum readings before becoming law. Netanyahu's government has argued the reforms are needed to limit judicial overreach, but protesters have decried them as threatening Israel's liberal democracy by weakening key checks and balances.
We are discussing the override clause, which in essence consists of suppressing the Supreme Court as if it was the enemy of the state, the body that for years has been there for the private populations affected by the state's decisions, religious, ultra-Orthodox and secular peoples, Jews, Arabs and Druze, people of the left and right. This law is a crack way to solve a significant challenge. We stay in the bulk of laws by erasing judicial review for a specific law. We give to the majority unlimited power over the ordinary citizen who will be paying the price.
We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.